All right, let's go up the road a piece by about an hour as the crow flies or as you get on the roads. This is Mike Seidel in Port Lavaca. Mike, I guess the biggest thing that you've noticed is a little increase in the wind, but more of an increase in the water, right?
Yeah, the water is really now piling up here. This is Lavaca Bay out here, and get a sense of these waves now just coming over, and the seawall's just about been covered up. You can't see it anymore. There was plenty of seawall earlier. This is the front patio, and the wind picking up the water off the top of the waves. This whole area now underwater. It'll be interesting to see how high the water does rise. It's already come up at least 2 to 3 feet, I would estimate. That's not official, but estimation. And the rainfall I mentioned earlier, I just added up the rainfall just today alone. Since this morning, we've had about 3.13, if my math is right, 3.13 inches since this morning. We had another 0.7 of an inch last night, so we're almost to 4 inches of rain, and we have got a long way to go. I mean, we've got all night tonight and tomorrow, and then we're going to have rain into the middle part of next week. So you can just imagine the rainfall totals when we've already almost had 4 inches, and we haven't even taken the brunt in those bands around the eye wall, the outer eye wall, where you get the really heavy rainfall rates of 2 to 3 inches an hour. The winds here sustained about 35 miles an hour. We've got some protection. I want to show you, I've gotten a lot of text and talk on social media. Be safe. Are you going to be okay? We are. This balcony, we're about 15 to 16 feet above the water level. This hotel was built 6 years ago, and when you build a hotel here in Port Lavaca, near the Gulf of Mexico, right here off the Lavaca Bay, you know you've got to build it sturdy, and they did all they could. This is concrete block here, steel, hard to get a cell phone call out of your room, and then the first level is actually there's no rooms there, and that's hardy plank. And they've got some walls that can blow away, but that's for safety purposes. But there's nothing hanging out here. We don't have any signs hanging that would cause us to be concerned about things blowing around. Now, if you look across Lavaca Bay, there's refineries over there, Port Comfort. I don't know if you can see the lights in the distance, but a sure sign that the power is still on here in this part of Calhoun County, which was under a mandatory evacuation as of late morning. Rainfall now not particularly heavy, but we keep an eye on the radar. And again, the worst is yet to come as far as the heaviest rain and the gusty winds here in Port Lavaca. Jim, Port O'Connor out there on the water on the barrier island, along with Port Aransas Pass, Rockport, all those areas are going to get clobbered, even up towards Palacios. And it'll be interesting to see how high the winds gust in Victoria, because they've already gusted to nearly 50 miles an hour, well ahead of what could be an eye going over Victoria early Saturday morning. Reynolds Wolf will be live on the Weather Channel starting a little after midnight in Victoria. So we'll have the pictures from there. Jim, let me send it back to you in Corpus as we go to darkness here. We get dark here in the area around Port Lavaca. Let's hope the power stays on for everyone tonight, but it seems unlikely that it will.
Michael, we appreciate that report. Adding up. All right, let's get a look at what's happening about an hour to my north. This is Port Lavaca, Texas, and Mike Seidel. Mike, some pretty strong wording, especially in the surrounding counties where you are, for people to leave. And that sounds like it was some pretty good advice, especially if people took it.
Indeed, this is not something you want to mess around with, because even inland areas like Victoria are going to get hit with wind gusts that may be clocked over 80, 90 miles an hour later on tonight, overnight, early morning hours. By the way, Reynolds Wolf will be live all night from Victoria, so we'll be on all night. We'll have pictures to show you what's going on there. That is about 30 miles north of here, and we're about 25 miles from the Gulf, so we're talking about 55 or so miles inland from the Gulf, Victoria. Where we are now, we want to give you a sense of how safe we feel. We're underneath the Holiday Inn Express and Suites here in Port Lavaca. So this whole lower level is elevated, kind of like giant stilts, if you may. And so there's nothing down here. There's some storage rooms, some equipment rooms, but everything that matters, all the rooms, the offices are upstairs. So you can see how high the water would have to rise, and it would have to go beyond this. It would have to go up about 15 feet. But it's now come around. The tide has come up. I should say tide, the water rise. There's not much of a tide here, about 6 inches from high to low. The water rise, the surge has come up. It's come around the building. And this right here to my left, that's how you drive up and check into the front door, but we may show you that later, and the water flowing into the parking lot. I want to take a run down here. You can see how the water is coming through here right here under the fence. So you get the flow of water. It's about 4 to 5 inches deep. We've got light here. I want to take you underneath the hotel. Excuse me. And this is how we get inside from underneath and out front. We go up this ramp, and it's also for handicap. And this is the way you drive up. The front is way up there, so you can see how much elevation we have in this hotel. Then we're going to come out here, and as I walk out here, I'm going to lose my wind protection, and it's going to get mighty windy. And when you stand here, I don't know if you can hear it at home, but you can hear the roar, and that's an eerie feeling. You know the winds are picking up that roar around this building. Let's go out here and show you what we've got. I'll keep the Mark Weiser, photographer, stay right here. I'm going to go out into the brunt of the storm and show you what we have. So this is the wind right now, sustained about 35 miles an hour. We got some higher wind gusts, and what you can't see, that's Lavaca Bay and the bridge. But we're getting some very heavy rain now, and as I mentioned earlier, we're pushing 4 inches alone, and we're just, we've got a long, long way to go. So, Jim, we're feeling very confident about our safety here. Just have to see how things go overnight tonight.
Mile-per-hour gusts. All right, let's go up to Mike Seidel in Port Lavaca. Mike, you're starting to get into some of those more intense bands now.
Yes, indeed, Jim. We are standing out now, full brunt of Harvey, the wind coming across Lavaca Bay to my right, the parking lot filling up with water, and the rain stinging me through my jacket and my shirt. Feels more like a sleet storm in Amarillo in January. Boy, it's really roaring in here right now. This is one of those bands. And again, we've got a long way to go. This thing is not moving very fast. It's slowing down as the eye wall now hits the coast of Aransas County. Aransas Pass, the Rockport area, that whole area is getting crushed. That's where you have the strongest winds, the heaviest rainfall, but the real threat is going to be the wind and the structural damage. We've already had gusts up there just over 100 miles an hour. Look at the rain blowing in the light here in Port Lavaca. The power is still on. We're keeping our fingers crossed, but with this kind of wind, and again, all these trees, especially inland with the rain and the wind, easily for them to be uprooted. And the other issue is most hurricanes, tropical storms move in, move out, power crews are in place, they come in, get the bucket trucks back up, and boom, the power's back on, maybe in a few days at most. But this wind's going to stay up, and if they can't get up into their bucket trucks, the power's going to be off for quite a while. Fortunately, it is summertime and not the winter, so you don't have to worry about needing heat or portable heaters and that whole issue. We're going back to Jim K and Troy right now. Is that the word? Okay, let's bring in Dr. Knabb, Dr. Rick Knabb, our former Weather Channel hurricane expert, then went to the Hurricane Center, now back, and we're happy to have him with us and his expertise. Dr. Knabb, what are you thinking about here in Port Lavaca about being clipped by the eastern side of the eye wall from Harvey?
Well, I think you're on the side of the hurricane that could bring storm surge into your area. Again, Port Lavaca itself, a little bit elevated, and I'll show you on the potential storm surge flooding map what we think are the hottest spots for the storm surge. But just to other side of the hurricane, the onshore flow side, the stronger side, this is where Mike Seidel is up in Port Lavaca. He's not on the immediate coastline of the Gulf of Mexico, but he's on a bay in Port Lavaca. And Mike Seidel, what are you experiencing now? We're seeing that the winds are sustained at tropical storm force, and you're on a slightly elevated area compared to surrounding spots. What are you seeing in terms of wind and water?
Dr. Knabb, we've seen the water continuously rise around the hotel, but again, the hotel is built way up, so there's no living space until you get about 16 to 17 feet up above the parking lot, and the parking lot is above a seawall, so we're nicely elevated. We feel very confident we're going to be okay here. We've got a nice, strong, sturdy steel concrete hardy plank building that was built with good specs because it was built 6 years ago, and they're not going to build something on Lavaca Bay in this day and age that can't withstand this kind of weather. Although it's been a long time since they've had a hurricane impact here. 70, we had Celia, but really the locals talk about Carla in 1961. They did have a mandatory evacuation back with Ike 9 years ago, but Ike went north to the Bolivar Peninsula, north of Galveston, and we know what happened there, and they were spared here. Boy, look, can you hear that wind? Woo! And I mean, this is about as strong as we've seen so far. Boy, that had to be pushing 50, 55 miles an hour. Got to keep the center of gravity low. It's the Seidel lean, as they say at the Weather Channel. I don't weigh much. I don't want to blow down the street here, but you can just sense the power of this hurricane as it comes on shore. Now the water's coming up, Dr. Nab, and it's going to stay up, and the real concern is how long do we stay with the onshore winds? Now Jim's winds are offshore because he's on the other side of the hurricane, but we're going to be onshore winds for a while because it's not moving. Typically a hurricane, tropical storm moves in, moves out, you get the offshore flow, and I saw that with Floyd in 99. I took the eye in Wilmington right on the intercoastal, and the water came in and then it went right back out. So that's not the situation here. This water is going to stay up for a while. Plus you throw on top all this rainwater. So we're getting inundated by seawater and rainwater here in these coastal communities. And I tell you, this wind is really ripping right now here in Port Lavaca. Keep in mind, we're 25 miles from the Gulf, but there's not a lot to slow the wind down because it's all water between here and Port O'Connor and the very warm Gulf of Mexico. Water temps mid to upper 80s, helping to fuel a Category 4 hurricane, our first one to make landfall since Carla in 1961. You can try to stay with me here. I still feel safe. You know, you worry about blowing objects, but the only thing that can hit me right now is water. Basically is water. There's nothing upwind from me except some palm fronds, maybe a palm frond or two, but I'm not worried about debris blowing around. But we're really taking this band pretty good right now. Woo! And look at the wave action. But we've got a lot of elevation here. Highway 35 is still fine. That's elevated even higher than we are, and that would be the main route that way back towards Houston should we have to get out of here in the next couple of days. That was one concern I had, was the water would stay up and shut off the exit routes, either US 87 north to Victoria or 35 back towards Palacios. But so far so good, but we have a long way to go, Dr. Nab, and I think we're going to see winds even stronger than this in the next few hours here in Port Lavaca.
Yeah, Mike, I wanted to point out a couple things and emphasize a couple points you just made. First of all, you were talking about how you're going to be in onshore flow for a considerable amount of time, and that is absolutely correct, because again, here's the hurricane and the eye and the eye wall. Port Lavaca is up here, and as Mike said, many miles from the immediate Gulf Coast, and as this continues to move northwestward and slows down, it's going to keep Mike and Port Lavaca and surrounding areas in the stronger side of the hurricane, the onshore flow side, and you will get the water rise to keep increasing the closer the strongest part of the hurricane gets. So water rise will continue to increase, and the longer the water pushes from the Gulf of Mexico into the bay, the more the water will pile up, even if the hurricane doesn't move a whole lot. Just the continued onshore flow will increase the water levels, and you'll continue to get hours and hours and hours of tropical storm and then hurricane force winds. But Mike, I wanted to ask you, you've got view of the roads there. What is your sense in terms of how many people have gotten out? Do we have any people that you know of that are still in danger in areas prone to storm surge there?
What I think you asked me is about how many people have evacuated. Most of this town is out of here. The people we talked to yesterday were heading out. We saw a lot of folks here on the beaches with campers. They were pulling out to higher ground. We saw a lot of houses and buildings either boarded up or being boarded up last night at dinner time. This town is pretty much emptied out, and for good reason. There's about 12,500 people in Port Lavaca, and this, whoa, we just, something just blew on by. Not sure what that was. Maybe something off the roof, maybe a shingle or something, but I'm pretty certain that this town is pretty empty. After talking to the mayor yesterday and the law enforcement too, they have gone around knocking on doors, trying to get everybody to go. They didn't, you don't have to leave, and if you didn't leave, they, requested that they have contact information next to kin in that matter. But again, the roadway 35 is still fine. The water has not come up that high, and get a sense here. We're 3 or 4 inches of water here in the parking lot. And the waves over the seawall in the front. We'll go back around front at some time this evening, around towards the bay, and show you what it looks like there. But again, the hotel built way up here, but this wind now is unrelenting. It certainly has ramped up, sustained now 40 to 45 miles an hour. Some of those gusts, boy, they just cut right through you, Dr. Nav. I would suspect some of these gusts now have pushed at least 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, and Mike, I can show folks.
Only to get worse here as the storm crawls onshore tonight and Saturday morning.
Yep, and we can see the radar combined with the wind observations. Of course,